Hey, good morning. Um, Super morning anyway. So I'm just trying to, in the near future, I might be super busy. So I'm just trying to do some videos and over the next few days and kind of get, information out there. So, um, I was basically in private practice for well, I'm still in private practice, but not as big as it used to be. But I used to be, at one point, I would see 6 or 7 people a day, sometimes 6 days a week, for a long time, for years and years and years. And basically, like a lot of people have or do, the only licensing that was available was massage licensing. So anyway, so did all that, got a massage license. I had that for like 15 years or something like that, but I didn't really do massage. I mean, I did do massage, but within massage, I did a lot of other work on people. Different kinds of releasing, emotional release, just all kinds of different things. So I used to be booked 3 months in advance. Took like sometimes if you weren't in on my schedule and you didn't book an appointment, sometimes you'd either have to wait for somebody to cancel or anyway. So a lot of people always will ask me now, that I come in contact with, like, I was never really able to find a massage therapist that could do the kind of work that you do. It's like, well, it's because I wasn't really doing massage. And because I was kind of more quiet person, it took me a long time. I used to be super, super quiet, extremely kind of, I think, passive. And, I've become different, like probably the exact opposite on a verbal level. Doesn't mean that that I used to be, which is a good thing. Change is good. So my whole family was dying, and after 18 years, I think, of working on people or something like that, I took a break. So I was kind of working on a few people on the side. And then I kind of started traveling and doing a lot of other work. I got some consulting work to put together alternative, what I call conscious medical clinics, which are all about holistic medicine and would contain places outside of the U.S. where people could go to get alternative treatment. And we're talking like non-medical treatments, like totally getting away from the whole medical system. I mean, there are some amazing, brilliant doctor people. Just because a person doesn't have an MD doesn't mean that they're not a doctor. And just because they don't go to a university does not mean that they're not a doctor. So, plus my whole family was dying. I ended up getting brain cancer. There was a lot going on. So I took some time off and traveled and was doing more consulting work and, a whole host of other stuff. And I also did a whole bunch of other studying. I mean, I think over my life, I've taken Western medical classes. I've taken, like outdoor wilderness medicine curriculums because I wanted to guide more. But when I got my brain cancer, that kind of changed things. But I think I'm eventually going to, be climbing again and all that other stuff. So because I've completely healed all the issues and problems. So there was just a lot going on, and so I went back to school. I think I have like something like 25 certificates and Western medicine, alternative medicine, different kinds of treatments. I've apprenticed with a lot of people, especially like shamanic kind of medicine people. Plus, I come from a background of those kind of people. And so, over the course of my life, I have a pretty monster education. I mean, it's all mishmashed together, and there's no way that you could put it all together. But I laugh sometimes and tell my friends I probably would have 2 PhDs. I mean, like the equivalency, if there was some kind of curriculum that, hosted and housed all the things that, I've studied, which are basically all about health, the biosuit, our energy fields, and how to heal, how to eliminate pain and how to heal, and how to get stronger and have longevity. So, I've always when I was young, I was pretty lucky because I was allowed to read just about any kind of reading material that I wanted to read. And because my family was so kind of abnormal, I was reading like Jane Roberts, the Seth materials, when I was like a teenager, Carlo Castaneda, the older Carlo Castanedas, all kinds of different kinds of astrology books. I mean, whatever I could get my hands on. So I was a pretty strange cookie, and growing up in a conservative state like Nevada, I was a really strange cookie. Yeah. So, and, I've had healing abilities since I was born. Yeah. So the places that I come from or that I've been, like Nikola Tesla was a person who did the kind of work that he did. And he learned it from all the other places that he's been, not including Earth, before Earth, as a being traveling. And so my whole, I think, background has always been medicine, energy, longevity, healing. And so in 2000, when I decided to come back to Reno after traveling around and then also going back to school for lots of different things, the state of Nevada in 2009 had legislation that was going to go through the legislature, the Complementary Medicine Act, which would have eliminated anything alternative, vitamin C would have been a felony. If you get a felony, you can't leave the country. You can't get a passport. You can't rightfully own a weapon. And they were moving their jurisdiction outside of their own court systems and creating kind of a new court legal jurisdiction. So they could use actually law enforcement to, arrest you. So because of licensing, they have their own boards and they have their own court. And so if you're not licensed with them, they have no legal right to do anything to you. And you don't have to appear in their court. And if you're not licensed, it gives you the opportunity to be able to seek, civil cases in a regular judicial court against them for trespassing, or stalking or harassing, right? The only way that you comply is by going to their court. They send you a cease and desist or whatever, and then you go to their court. Well, you just complied. So you end up in a nonverbal way underneath their legal jurisdiction. So anyway, So in 2009, there was going to be this legislation that was going through. And so say, for example, you were going to be having a nutritional store or supplement store. You would have had to hire a doctor, a medical doctor, and the doctor would have had to decide as the clients were coming in, if they needed vitamins and what kinds they could actually have, and write a prescription for them right there for the person, so that they could show, oh yeah, here to the coppers, oh yeah, I've got vitamin C, but it's been signed off by my medical doctor. It would have eliminated every alternative medicine in the state. The only people that could have practiced anything alternative would have been medical doctors. And there was a lot of criminal activity going on with our homeopathic board. So there's this amazing man named Harvey Beagleson who, had been a medical doctor for like 50 years. And he even, did triage in Vietnam. And had at one point like medical licenses in 4 states, and he went completely alternative. I mean, still to this day, he's being prosecuted by the federal government for absolutely really no reason other than he surrendered his business license, his medical licenses, because he doesn't really want to play. I mean, he had his medical license, and then he would be working with people and charging their insurance in an appropriate way for different treatments, but because the government couldn't do anything because he's a doctor and these treatments aren't killing people, they're actually making people better. What do? The typical thing, they send in the IRS and they read all of his medical files and everything else, and then they decide that he's been frauding the healthcare system. So he was like done, forget it, then I won't have a license, everyone pays cash. And that's the end of that. Well, it's never the end of that. And I remember one time he made a comment to me. He said, when I was telling him that I was going through all these legal attacks in the state of Nevada, and he said, yeah, I went through a big one there, and I'll never, ever step foot in that state again. But he said, if the government and the state's attacking you, then you must be pretty good at what you do, because they just don't go after anybody. So that kind of made me feel a lot better, to keep going with the kind of work instead of just stopping and doing it subtly for a few people. I mean, because people need some choices. They don't have any choices. And it sucks that they have to pay cash for the services, that the insurance that they pay for is not going to pay for anything that's going to help them. I tell people all the time are asking me if I take insurance or I cover insurance. It's like nothing that insurance pays for is health. Everything that insurance pays for, and this is what makes chiropractors criminals, because they used to be like rogue renegade agents against the system, and they had chiropractor jails, and then they decided to work with Western medicine and, obey those constructs so that they could have insurance, which insurance is like a free ride. So most insurance companies will give people, 10, 20 chiropractor treatments. If the person needs more or is on disability or whatever else, state industrial insurance, sometimes you get years of treatment. You're looking at $50 a pop on a regular basis. And then they throw in other stuff. Oh, hot towels, hot packs, electrodes on your back. So, by the time you get out of there, your insurance just got charged, $110. So, I hate to say it, but, anyone that takes insurance, or you can see how uncomfortable I am talking about this stuff. But it really irks me, really kind of like pisses me off. Anyway, so what happened was I decided to come back to Nevada, and I had started learning some other techniques, right? Because I had brain cancer. I had to go and find things that were going to help me. And so I went on a long journey, and there was only a few things that I found other than the work that I was doing and my shamanic work that actually helped. Anyway, I learned this one technique. And I ended up, now I developed it so I do it on animals. I think I'm the only person in the world that probably does it on horses. There are some other practitioners that have dabbled and do different kinds of methods on dogs. But I do it on all animals that have 4 legs, farm animals and everything else. And went back to school to learn animal chiropractic through an education kind of certification kind of a thing, not like a big college. But I went to the guy and I studied with him, and I do his techniques, who developed it on thoroughbred racehorses. So, and the thing is, in the state of Nevada, it's a level 2 felony to touch an animal if you're not a vet. And thanks to Ensign, who was a criminal senator in the state of Nevada, he was a veterinarian, and in order to get tons of veterinarian money in his coffers, he decided to pass all these laws that gave veterinarians, certain status. And, it's like a level 2 felony if you're the owner of a horse and you float their teeth. I mean, people have been treating their own animals since they started using them, or, for farming and riding. And it's the responsibility of the owner, because the owner knows about the animal. Oh, well, it looks like he's kind of chewing weird, so I better, float his teeth, which basically means, shave them down. So that the jaw of the horse doesn't go bad, right? I mean, they can get TMJ super bad. So if you have to wait because you have to have a vet come out, that's a problem. If you have to pay a whole bunch of money to have a vet come out, that's a problem. I mean, a lot of these people take care of their own animals. So, Nevada has done, the people of Nevada who are ranchers and farmers and all these people that manage their own animals, they have no idea that the basic care that they're giving their animals is level 2 felony. Yeah. So anyway, it's amazing, like, the criminal activity that happens in all these states, and it just goes completely unnoticed by people. And then they're shocked. They're like, oh, I got a cease and desist for treating my own horses. Oh my God, it's so terrible. Well, it's like, nothing to whine about. It's the law. Because you know what? You as a citizen weren't paying attention to what the people in Nevada were passing at the legislative level. Same thing with the holistic or alternative medicine. So in 2009, they decided that they were going to eliminate anything alternative, including supplements. It would have closed 1,500 supplement stores across the board. It would have, basically eliminated, unless the doctor said, oh yeah, you need a massage, and wrote you a prescription for it. Wasn't going to happen. Or any other alternative therapy. And I think it probably would have even taken out, the chiropractor board, because, they say they're doctors, but they're not MDs. And this bill was for MDs to control everything in the state of Nevada. So, anyway, so they decided before the bill had ever been heard. Now, in my life, my family, because we're weird healers and prophets and exorcists and, doody. I mean, it was like this thing about stay away from the police, stay away from the government, hide in the shadows, do your work. Don't leak it out. Try to come up with regular, verbiage so people can kind of understand it. There's no regular verbiage for most of the work that I do, or that I've learned, or that I've been taught, or that I've been trained. So in 2009, In January, the state started doing an assault. They started using all the boards. Mind you, there are not that many. Oh, and Harvey Beagleson, this amazing doctor, he was the one that actually created the homeopathic board in Nevada. So there's only like 2 homeopathic boards in the whole United States, or at least there used to be. There was one in Arizona that he started, and then the one in Nevada. Well, the homeopathic doctors. And we still don't license midwives or anything like that in the state of Nevada. There's very few licensing. So, you always have all this shit going on. Like, people want you to maybe come and work at their office, or they have an office for their company, but you don't get in the door because you don't have a licensable therapy. And if you don't have a licensable therapy, then you can't get liability insurance. I mean, it's all just like a racket anyway. It's to keep the good people out. In California, they passed, I think it's SB 577 in 2003. That is the something healthcare bill. So what it is as long as you give your client, the kind of treatment that you're going to do, your kind of background or education, and they sign it, it's good for 3 years. And it protects you against the state. It protects you against the client, and it's between you and the person you're working on, because California realized they can't regulate over 1,500 alternative modalities. I mean, there's new ones popping up all the time. I mean, they're off branches of other ones that require less education. But, so that's what they did. So they did the right thing. They made it simple and easy for people, right? And, you're still going to have counties and townships that are not going to accept it, that are not going to accept those documents. I mean, especially down in like LA and San Diego. They still are poo-poo heads about stuff. Okay, so anyway, in 2009, they decided, well, it started in the summer of 2008, and they started going to spiritual centers and little healthcare centers, and just the pharmacy board, massage board, all these boards who don't regulate all these people that are not licensed by them. So it was trespassing, and they were giving fake cease and desist that had no judicial signature on them, and in some cases, fake signatures, right? So alternative people had no idea what to do. It was like a major massacre. So many of them were put out of business, and a lot of them lost their homes, and a lot of people that had big educations in alternative field had to flee the state. And, it still hasn't been healed. I was attacked in January, cease and desist. And mind you, I'm not licensed by these boards, and they had no authority over me, but, my landlord didn't see it that way because they lied to. And if you look at the Constitution, the number one thing that in the Constitution that's upheld is contract law between two people. So they violated, by lying to my landlord, my personal contract. But what they did was they threw it in the lap of my landlord, where I rented my office space from. And because of their fear and asking me to leave in 24 hours, they put all the liability on them, taking the liability off the board, because they could say, oh, well, we didn't do that. Not what we did. They freaked out and kicked you out, so they hold the liability. Sue them. So anyway, so I'd been in like common law for a super long time, and the whole sovereignty thing. So, but you never really get it until you need it. So I didn't know what to do. I freaked out. Like, they were threatening arrest, fines of $1,000 a day. I mean, it was like horrific. So I ended up finding out about this bill that hadn't even gone through the legislature yet, that the state, and they were using the boards to police all the alternative people, like go out and find out where they're at, and then start removing them with false paperwork to get him out before the bill had even been heard or read in the first committee. So that's when I bucked up and said, yeah, no, I don't know what I'm going to have to do. So I ended up becoming a citizen lobbyist, and I ended up fighting against 50 bills. 47 of them didn't even make it anywhere, including this Complementary Medicine Act. I kicked that sucker's ass. It didn't even leave committee. In the end, we were lucky because it was the supplement people that started stepping up and saying, okay, well, if you're going to pass this bill, we want a paragraph included in the bill that exempts us from it. Well, they didn't want to exempt anybody from it. So then it was the federal, finally, the last blow before it was going to leave committee, because people wanted all these additions and subtractions. And it was the federal supplement people, lobbyists, that actually came down on that bill in the state of Nevada. And then it went boom, dead. It didn't go anywhere. So I like to think that I single-handedly made sure that bill died. But so 47 bills, 1,500 bills were brought in on average over a 6-month period. We're every 2-year legislator system. And I mean, who can read all those? We had 8 citizen lobbyists. I mean, 7 of them I was working with were brilliant and had huge legal backgrounds and family of judges and all kinds of stuff to try to uphold the civil liberties in Nevada. Some of these people have been holding the line since 1973. They're dying off. I mean, who in the fuck is going to be able to start holding the line? And a lot of them were super conservative religious. And there was a little bit of infighting, but all of us agreed on alternative medicine, alternative healthcare, nutrition is something to be salvaged and saved and fought for. So I learned to agree to disagree, work on the things that we could collaborate on, and then try to stay away from the things that we can't collaborate on. So only 3 bills passed. 1 was completely gutted out of 50. And 2 of them were radically changed. So I kicked some serious ass. I had never, out the gate. And the main woman that I worked with had told me on the phone, after I got the complementary medicine bill destroyed, she was just like, I can't even believe that you accomplished this. This is a major, major feat and major accomplishment. You should lobby. You should be a citizen lobbyist. You could really, change the world because you got it. I had to learn how to read law because, you read these bills as a regular person. You think, oh, those don't sound so bad. Well, you take the Black Law Dictionary and you start looking at the actual terms because they're written in legal form. So that means they're legal languaging, and you're horrified at what you saw. I tell people, I was a conspiracist before I citizen lobbied. After I citizen lobbied, I was a factualist because almost every conspiracy was fact, was in a bill, hidden in a bill somewhere in 2009 legislation. The Real ID was the scariest thing ever, that they want to chip babies. So they get this Real ID, chip your ID, supposed to go into effect. We fought it off in 2009, but they're still going to try to make it go into effect 2020, I think. I'm not accepting Real ID. I don't care if I don't get on an airplane. I could give a rat's ass. I'm not going to sign my name in blood for any kind of concentration camp, control system bullshit. I'm just not going to do it. So things became super radical for me once they realized I wasn't going to lay down and die like all these other alternative people and just be stabbed in the back and watch my life go down the drain. So I was doing a technique 2 nights a week when they came in and cease and desist me, that I call a shamanic blow. And I'll do a video about that, which radically moves the assemblage point and arrests disease. And it's not, I mean, sort of similar, but not to Carlo Castaneda's. His was a open hand thrust to the right side of the rib cage below the shoulder blade. That would shift people's assemblage point. And anyway, I'll talk about that, but it can fix people like that, change their whole consciousness, open up full brain function. I mean, totally shift and change everything. It's amazing what it does in animals. Unbelievable. It even shocks me sometimes. So there's no licensing for that, right? And I had a lot of people that were coming because I had a lot of past clients and everything else, and I'm getting back up on the pony. And I have people who hadn't seen me in like 10 years, and you know, they're like missing me and my work. And so so I become a citizen lobbyist. I battle 100 hours a week. You don't get paid for it. People let me stay on their couch because I was being threatened by the police. I had the Reno police sitting in front of my place where I was living every night in Sparks, which was not their jurisdiction. But, you know, they just sat out there to intimidate me and frighten me and threaten me. And, you know, you like think about who pays for that. Taxpayers. Taxpayers pay the government and the police department to threaten you, right? So then I was profiled and I was put on a list. So I had to kind of go in hiding, but so they couldn't really find me where I was at. And then I would travel back and forth to Carson City because I had to go to the legislature. Well, they would be looking for me because I was going to the legislature almost every day. Like I said, I was spending 100 hours a week. I was testifying. I was providing research. I was reading law. It got to where a couple of the people, you know, were so they're powerhouse legal people, citizen lobbyists. So they were asking me if I could read bills, and because we had 1,500 bills, and if I could go sit and take notes and listen to like the opening of the bills, so we could determine 8 people trying to run, you know, down 1,500 bills, so we could take down the worst ones. And so this is all I did. I was exhausted. I was pretty tired at the end. And there was a lot of like really serious demonic attacks. I mean, serious demonic attacks going on there. That's when I learned about, go back and look at my video, demonic possession, oaths and demonic possession, because it talks about that. And that's where I learned about job oaths, oaths of office, you know, and the demonic possession. It gives them, the demons or the reptilians that don't have bodies. That's what they are. They're demons. They you know, will traffic people's bodies and animate them in ways. That's why they'll say, I don't know why that cop went crazy. He's never gone crazy on someone in 25 years. Well, it's because he was jumped. Okay, so anyway, so we beat down that bill. You know, I'm being profiled, being pulled over every day for no reason, just to stop me from getting there. I mean, I would end up having to go 3 hours early to Carson City, which was a 45-minute drive from where I was at, just to be able to make it there on time to read bills. And it got to where the main, I was dealing with the Labor and Commerce Committee, and the head woman who was running it at that time had been a waitress at Denny's for 25 years and got elected as a senator and then ran this committee. And you looked at her profile online, it was all Homeland Security, Homeland Security, Homeland Security. You're like, oh my God. And she even admitted one time she got super pissed off. And she admitted that she doesn't really care about people's civil rights or civil liberties, that she will pass through legislation that goes against those things if necessary. So it was like a whole like crazy. It was crazy. So I would have to find out, because there were new meat looking for these certain kinds of bills, these really bad ones that they're trying to push through. They literally would take it off the docket and then they try to hide it somewhere else. So literally you had to go there early And you had to kind of, they'd be like, oh, there are all you people here to, listen to this bill? And we'd be like, yeah. They'd be like, oh, okay, well, and then they'd cancel it, okay? And then they'd put it somewhere else, or they'd move it to some other room for, it's like total sinister. So I got to where I would call the secretary of the head of the Commerce and Labor, and I was nice. I said, look, I can FOIA you. I have a lot of tools at my disposal, but I would rather just talk to you and ask you when, this certain bill is going to be heard or whatever else. And the secretary finally just told me after a while, she said, Ms. Dolgoff, we hate you, and we're not going to talk to you anymore. We don't want to, work with you. And we're not going to give you any of the information that you are desiring. So basically, you fuck off. So it just was really crazy. I mean, like on a legal level, spiritual level, mental level, just the whole 9 yards. Providing research, testimony. Then they would say, oh, yeah, you could present, 3 hours before the hearing. You could provide your research and everything else. Then they started changing the laws on me. No, it has to be 48 hours notice in order for you to testify, in behalf or against this bill. And then at one point, I was listening to some of the new medical board stuff. And after a lot of people talked, I was sitting in the very back, and I wasn't planning on talking because I was taking notes. Like, we had to figure out, was this bill going to be a good thing, or is it going to be a bad thing in addition to the medical board? And I remember her, speaking up from, their thrones, and just out of the blue, because I was super quiet. And she said, Ms. Dolgoff, do you want to add anything today? It was totally inappropriate. And I said, no, I'm just here to listen today. Thanks so much. So it was like constantly being targeted, them letting you know that they knew that you were there. They didn't like anybody who was new. You got 890 paid lobbyists, state and federal. And so, it was a battle. And I told people I would never do it again. And should people do it? Hell yeah. If you don't know what the hell is going on at your legislature, take 6 months off and go find out. Go down there and listen to all the bills that you think are disturbing to you. Or support some bills that you think are good, Go listen. Go interact. Testify. Do research in behalf or against bills. Because, you're not involved. And I didn't realize that because I'd been kind of told to stay out of it. But it was tough. It was a really hard period of my life. I went from having, brown hair to almost completely gray after it was over because of how intimidating and frightening and horrifying and scary the whole thing was. Well, then I got attacked 3 more times. The last big attack from the state and cease and desist from a different board. So they use all these kind of different boards. And I was actually working on people for free. I was helping those who can't afford insurance, who can't afford to go to a doctor. I had set up to do like a little mini clinic on Tuesdays and would work with people and help people. And they came in and cease and desist me, and they cease and desist the business owner. And that was the last one. And then I filed a whole bunch of, common law documents and paperwork and just let them know, like legal law paperwork that, I'm my own, representative, and that they are liars. They have no jurisdiction over me. And they didn't even give me a due process. They didn't even call me on the phone to talk to me. They're just going to cease and desist me and threaten me with being arrested if I didn't leave in an hour. Never been an actual complaint against me ever. They just don't like me taking money out of their own pockets or getting people off medications or whatever else it's going to be. So they don't like it. So I've had like some really tough run-ins. And I feel like now in my life, like I've been through the gauntlet. And this is what really projected me kind of into being homeless was I had no ability to work, lost because I had to keep moving, lost a whole bunch of respect. I mean, I'm like around 30 years that I've been working on people and animals. And was a really horrible and terrifying period of my life. I mean, it did help me in some ways because I started to go back to the roots of health, which are nutrition and nutrient-dense source of soil. Since I couldn't work, every time I turned around, they were like sending the cops after me or whatever else. I went back to school for farming, and I ended up doing some permaculture stuff, and went back to school for biodynamic program, did some other programs there that were amazing, life-changing. Was involved with Beet Inc. for a while. Was interned on farms that were some biodynamic, organic always. And a lot of the work that I've put together educationally is about making nutrient-dense compost and stuff like that for medicine, for internal, for people and animals, and because we're sterile and we need to up the microbial intake. We need more microorganisms in our body because we're pretty sterile. But it was a really tough period. So I'm still recovering. I'm still trying to get on my feet financially. Because, all of my clients, thought I was bad, thought I did something, and I didn't do anything. It was all about money and control. And it had nothing to do with the rights of people to choose the kind of health care that they want and that works for them in a good way. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to tell you that story. It was pretty tough. And in the end, the board that had attacked me, the last attack, when the executive director found out that the state won't protect you. I mean, the reason why you've been elected to some of these boards and stuff is because you're rogue and you have an attitude and you'll overstep your own legal jurisdiction. And they'll make you believe like, oh yeah, the attorney or the district attorney's office, oh yeah, we represent you. But then, once she got the paperwork and all that, and she realized like that they wouldn't protect her because she operated on her own and made these threats with no due process, that she was personally liable and that I could lien her house. Whether I got money from it or not was not the point, but stopping them. And as soon as you like lien their properties, their credit cards and all this other stuff, most of them can't ever get a job because part of their job is they have to have fraud checks. So they have to have criminal background checks and they also have to have financial background checks. So if they're like, have all these liens against everything they own, it's not even about collecting the money. You'll never get the money out. You'll just never do it. And there's no attorneys that are going to help you when you're in the alternative field. They're not going to take your case on just because it's the right thing to do. No, they hate people like us because they think they don't even understand like the work we do, but they consider us kind of like, fundamental religious, weirdos. But they don't realize like, medicine real medicine is part spiritual. You can't heal if you can't get your spirit together. Or your spirit's not talking to you anymore, or you've been so traumatized, like you don't have a relationship with your spirit anymore, or your mind, or your emotions. They've kind of branched those things off, like psychology, but, that's not always a spiritual. Plus, the whole psychiatric field, go do some research. It's fraud. It was based on fraud. It is fraud. And it has been fraud. Completely fraud. And, you know, you get stuck in there and you're in there for 15 years in counseling and therapy. And sometimes, yeah, I mean, but you should be making huge increments. Like, you know, working with the assemblage point. Huge increments. Maybe be equal to 50 years of therapy in like 2 sessions. So, and they get what, $100 an hour? You go to them for 15 years. Oh, and they take insurance. Oh, yeah. That again. Okay. So anyway, so I've been through the battle for my life. Over the last 3 years, they've decided that a lot of the alternative people now have like Citizens for Health, which is a big organization that was started in Colorado because they were arresting like 90-year-old herbalists and throwing them in federal prison. And so there are some really great organizations out there that are protecting people like me, but not in every state. It's small and far between. We individually have to fight. Alternative people don't like the system or the world. So it's a big problem for a group of people, the alternative people, having to learn law and fight legally and do their own stuff is probably like the worst possible thing in their minds that could ever happen to them. So now over the last 3 years, they've decided to murder alternative doctors, alternative practitioners, alternative medical researchers, anyone that's in the alternative field that seems like they're making a difference in people's health. So